Let's all go to Cargonia, land of stolen things. Oh, David Quartermaster, unless he is a link.
When trying to understand the history of something, inevitably you are drawn to the beginning, the point of creation. If we go through the Wayback Machine and cast our eyes upon the starting point of Space Station 13, beyond attributes 1 creator, Exadv1, the Wikipedia entry for Space Station 13 produces the same result. Back in 2003, Exadv1 sweated over his keyboard, and many years and dying clowns later, here we are today. Welcome to the interview, sir. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, yes. I am the person who is commonly referred to, at least for Space Station 13 stuff, as Exadv1. Although you can, if you want, refer to me as Entrion. That might be more pronounceable, because I've been trying to transition to that one recently and use it for other video games.
I understand. The first thing I want to ask... The mistakes
of youth.
Yeah,
name selection.
Well, right. No, I get it. It's... Everyone has that old gamer name that was chosen when they were young, and then it sticks with them into adulthood or middle adulthood, and they go, crap, I need something a little more adult.
Pretty much. And sure, it was mostly because World of Warcraft would not let you choose that type of name as a character name. So it's like, all right, let's just switch it around.
There you go. So the first thing I want to ask you is something that's been circling the internet for a long time, at least in Space Station 13 circles, and that is the history of the game. In the beginning, there was an Atmos simulator. Then, so far as the story goes, someone stole it from you and reverse engineered it. This story has been repeated for years. Can you tell us what really happened and where this game truly started?
Yes. So, God, it was so long ago. Well, it would have been probably around 2002. I read an article from Game Programming Gen by, I believe it's Thomas Forsyth, on using cellular automata to simulate fluid mechanics in games. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I don't remember many games that I've played doing this, and I have been playing and fiddling with this Beyond engine that I can use to prototype things and mess around with game concepts. So I coded up a very rough approximation to the rough approximation that he wrote about. And at the time it was literally just like an Atmos simulator. Plasma, Phoron, Toxin, whatever it's called, was added simply because I needed a gas that was visible. Unfortunately, air is generally not visible. So over the course of that year, I just slowly evolved more and more features onto it. At some point, it went from being on some random Terran Earth-like planet to being in space, mostly as an excuse to have a vacuum and more interesting air environments. And then more features. Eventually, it renamed itself. I renamed it to Space Station 13, again for the pun, because 13, the bad things happen, things that are named 13. Then I started hosting it. I think for the longest time, I was the only one who ever hosted it. I don't remember if I ever actually gave anyone else the hosting files. At some point, I did eventually give someone else the hosting files, and then I was going further in my schoolwork, mostly high school, and had less and less time for these types of personal projects. That was nominally focused on other things. And I think at one point it was Asa requested to do more principal development himself. So I was like, yeah, sure, here, have the source, you can do whatever you want to advance the thing. I can't remember exactly what I said, this is far too long ago. And so he developed it. And then from there, I kind of lost track of the history a bit. I know since then, from when I was working with the goonstation developers that at some point, I believe it was Rick and Hobnob, had decompiled one of the binary executables and basically rewrote most of the game systems to what you see today. At around, how old was I? Let's say 2008. Yeah, that sounds about right. Over the summer, I was bored, I guess, and decided to look into what was happening with the game. And I saw that the goonstation developers I saw that goonstation was involved. I actually was not very familiar with what Something Awful was at that time. I am apparently oblivious. And that will be a running theme, my obliviousness, throughout this interview, I suppose.
It's fine. You're the creator. You're allowed to be oblivious.
And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. So I played a little bit. And I talked to some of the current developers. It turns out it's really easy to get them to talk to you when you're the one who hosts the hub entry for the thing they're hosting. Although I don't think they used the hub entry at the time. But they were still willing to talk to me. And then they let me look at this. I can't remember exactly. I'm pretty sure I talked to O-Staff first, which most people don't even remember these days. And then very quickly Rick hopped up and Linek and all the other people. And the main thing I wanted to do was fiddle with the Atmos stuff again, because I think I had some ideas on how to make it better that had just like popped in over the summer while I was not doing anything. I was like, oh, I could actually try this again. So then I did that, and I actually looked at the code, and it was hilarious, because the Atmospheres code was pretty much exactly how I remembered it. I don't think anyone had touched it. And some of the user interface code had also never been touched. And my understanding is that the lighting system was done by Hobnob. Power networks were done by him as well. And then the long-form version of the story is people have the notion that it was stolen on a flash drive. Actually, I have no idea where that's from. I've never had this code stolen on a flash drive. I don't think the Goon developers did. Maybe Exadv did, but then that doesn't seem to mesh well with the fact that the Goons decompiled it. Regardless, from what my analysis of the source code when I was dealing with the goonstation, it was either code in systems that I had originally written and didn't care that they were using, or code in systems that they had written or rewritten to be wholly their own. So that's generally why I contest it was stolen and completely, because none of the code at that time was controversially stolen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you're just saying, at a certain point, someone else was interested to, continue your work. You handed it to them, and they continued the work. So the whole notion of the code being stolen and decompiled and all this other conspiracy is just probably not true.
Yeah. Well, it was definitely, it was decompiled for them to get the access to the source, I think. Yeah, almost assuredly. But, yeah, I don't mind for the stuff that was, because basically I had no problems with them continuing to develop in that way. In fact, if they would have asked me, and I wasn't disappearing, I probably would have just given them whatever version of the source I had at the time. By the time I was re-involved, it wasn't worth for me to give them any versions of the old source, because they basically had all they needed or had rewritten the better version.
All right.
And since then, those versions are, I think, lost on hard drives at my family's house. I don't even know if those hard drives still work. But that's fine. There's enough screen captures of how awful the artwork used to be.
I think the term is antiquated.
Yes, that does make it sound so much more official.
Yeah. Well, I've spent so many years playing this game, and I can't look on it as it. It had its primitive years, but well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. How long did it take to make the original?
Well, it's hard because it was a continually evolving thing, but the actual Atmos stuff, probably not very long. I think I whipped it together within a week of that, because it's really just, the original core version was loop through every tile in the game, do an average, or actually no, the loop through every tile in the game, plus or minus one from adjacent tiles, and then that quickly went to do an average, and just do that every second. That is not hard to code. It's very, it's really just the gradual evolution process, which took probably just years, 2-3 years of just on and off, tiny bit of work.
So was the coding difficult or easy at the time for you?
So that wasn't, so, let's see. I had started coding, how old was I then? Probably 5 years, wait, I was in the, sorry, I need to, 2003.
Visit the Wayback Machine.
2003, and I was in that. I started probably, let's say, 4 to 5. I started programming 4 to 5 years before that, but my coding I still wasn't very strong on what we'll call higher level math when I did that, the 13 stuff, or data structure algorithms. Although there's only so much you could do with data structures and beyond because of the way the virtual machine is. But so yeah, that wasn't the first thing I had coded. So that helps. So it didn't really take that long to do for the original demonstrations. And then from that, like everything else was just like add this item, add this area, add this tiny system. So like, you do one-offs, very actually amusingly what they call agile now, I guess. Development of the rest of the game systems.
All right.
The first, I do not even know why, because Traitor was okay, fine. Extended was the first mode, if you want to be pedantic, because there originally was no modes.
Yeah, I mean, the original mode, I suppose, was see how long you can play this without losing your mind.
Yeah. But when there were modes, the first mode was essentially Traitor, because there was no... And then very quickly after Extended, and Traitor used to... The reason why it's called Extended, by the way, is that Traitor used to have a set time period. There was no calling the shuttle. The shuttle would come after a certain period of time. Extended, but just the shuttle would still come, but just a little bit later. That's why it was extended.
Interesting.
Yeah, things people don't know. And there was a mode in the middle, which people seem to hate now, Meteor, which was meant to be more of a PvE mode, where meteors would just destroy the station one by one. I realize now why people hate it. We can get to that later.
That's fine. I'd love to dive into that. I mean,
yeah. We can dive into that when we talk more about like PvE directions and stuff.
Oh yeah.
That people, because it was essentially meant to be the PvE mode. Like, Traitor was the PvP mode, Meteor was the PvE mode, and Extended was the sandbox. And this is all before I actually knew what these terms really meant. But
live and learn, Yeah. I mean, in the early days, was the community hard to manage, or was it just like 20 people?
It was like less than 20 people, yeah.
So there was no drama back then, I take it.
Nothing really substantial. Nowhere near as much as you get drama today. Good lord.
So what was the scene like back then? Did you have to message people and say, I'm putting the server up, or?
No, oddly, I would just put it up and then people would join. I think, a lot of people who played would be on my Beyond. Okay, also keep in mind at the time, other Beyond games were pretty popular. Like, it wasn't, there were other games people played on Beyond besides just S13 and whatever random anime style thing people do. So I had people who would commonly play in my friends list who would look to see them hosting it, and they might be playing other things.
Yeah.
And so then they would play, and they'd be like, oh, okay, well then they finish off that, and they would join the 15 stuff, etc. Plus the servers, again, always less than 20 people. 20 would be I don't even know if my home computer could have supported hosting 20 people on a dial-up connection. But yeah, so it was much, much, much smaller. Yeah, and it was mostly just people fiddling around. I just can't even remember. I can remember actually what the station used to look like, but I just can't remember what people did. It was mostly just fiddling around. Although, amusingly, that's basically what people do now, just with a little bit more structure.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so you've told me why you made Spacestation 13. Started as an Atmos simulator, fun little code project. Why Beyond?
Oh, I mean, that's a good question, too. I had originally started my coding in Quick Basic, specifically. And then I think I did sort of pseudo-learn C. God, this is really hard to remember now. But the Beyond was, I don't know, I was just searching in what had to have been early 2000s. Probably before then. I had to look at all my account is. It was oh, there's this fun little game engine with all these other games on it. So I downloaded Beyond, played the other games, oh, this is fun. And then it's I'll make my own thing. And for the time was basically, I mean, you can basically think of it a game engine now. You know, you have Unity and Unreal. It was basically kind of like one of those, except much less principled. Like, I mean, Unity and Unreal are these like massive commercial projects with like a lot of developers, tried and true industry, like well-known industry standard practices in their operations. Note, this isn't me saying they're great. I'm sure they have their own problems, but like you know they're commercial products clearly. Like, people make real games on these things that are like selling as like maybe even AAA titles. Yeah, Hearthstone I think is made on Unity, right? Yeah. Beyond not commercial grade, but I mean I didn't know that. Also, there wasn't at the time. That wasn't a thing. There weren't really like these like big game engines you could just do into development with, as far as I can remember. So Beyond was the only. Basically, it was just I stumbled into Beyond, and again, it had another game community. It was like so, and the language it was really not that bad. I mean, people see SS13 source now, and it's like really intimidating because it's just huge, and I think it's always been an order of magnitude larger than the source has always been an order of magnitude larger than the next Beyond project. And I know this because of our interactions with Beyond developers when I was doing goonstation stuff. They just didn't believe us when we said how large our code base was until we just showed them. And that makes the Beyond's language seem much more intimidating and worse than it is because it's literally much, much larger than the game engine was designed to support. And also the server counts involve probably order of magnitude more people than the netcode was designed to support, etc. Yeah. I was just the only thing at the time, and so it was written in the only thing I knew at the time. And then, push comes to shove. I mean, when I was working on it, I never really hit a point where like Beyond was actually that much of a problem. I'd say near the end I did because I wanted to do this fancy thing with like moving shuttles, and it turned out to be very challenging. But it was at that time I kind of had to step away to do schoolwork, so that I just kind of dropped it. And then when I came back, I mean, there was now an order of magnitude more content from the Goon developers and whole new great systems that were all written in Beyond DM. It was like, okay, well, I guess we're here now. And it hadn't occurred to me when I was coming back to be like, oh, maybe we should port it to another thing. And so we never did, and then just kept going and Beyond. And it was when do we do the remake interview segment? Is that part of future?
I would say that
Past,
we're getting
alternative realities.
We're gonna get to that fun stuff. Trust
me.
So
we can defer that part. We can defer why still Beyond to a separate segment.
Yeah, no, I mean we'll get to that. I mean, what were this game's inspirations, if any? Alien.
Definitely. Also, particularly in Beyond, there was a game made by Gug Hunter, who I think you can still get the sources for this actually if you Google enough, called Space Tug, all in word, which was basically an alien game where one place was the alien and everyone else was the crew and trying to escape. And that featured not an atmospheric simulator, more like a overclocked vacuum simulator in that it like drastically overcompensated for how much vacuum pressure is. But I just loved the concept and took that and with the paper and we're like, oh, let's do this, let's do more with this.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see why Traitor was the first mode, because the Traitor kind of took the place of the alien, although that actually ends up being substantially different. Yeah, so definitely that. Recently, I mean, I just in general am a fan of sci-fi, so probably bits and pieces from every sci-fi thing I've seen in my entire life, but primarily, I mean, Alien and Aliens. Especially if you're looking at the like technology level / style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that retrofuturism sort of thing, Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. So, a lot of people have been contributing questions. When I told a few chosen people that I was going to do this interview, and I said I would really appreciate if you could help me come up with some questions. One of the ones that has come up time and time again of massive import is, who made the clown?
Goonstation.
So the goons just said, we need a clown in space.
Yeah, I think the clown was in the source before I started doing it with them again. So, God, I'd have to double check that. Well, it depends. Was the clown in revision 4407? If it is, then definitely Goonstation. Because I don't remember them adding the clown, but I remember there always being a clown when I came back.
Interesting.
So I really want to say, and it makes sense. Just totally a goon thing to add.
I agree with you.
I cannot imagine. Yeah, it super fits every profile I have that the goon has added it.
Yeah, I mean that seems like something they would do. Like, this space station where there's space terror and space horror and space wonder. Let's add a clown.
It's funny because I used to take it a bit too seriously and kind of hated the clown, but I've kind of warmed up to not the clown as a whole, just the concept of that like comedic relief.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you need that one person who can commit to pratfalls and honking the horn and so on while the station runs.
Yeah, basically.
So, what was the first job in Space Station 13?
Let's see. God. What were the jobs? So I did add the jobs. I remember adding that system. It was probably, it was probably station engineer, it was probably atmospheric technician, station engineer, captain, and medical doctor, and like toxins researcher and medical researcher. Just like a weird smattering of things. Because like the jobs were added after a bunch of other things were added. So like it wasn't like I added the med bay and then we added the doctors. Like the med was always there, and then now we put the doctor there. So those are probably the core jobs. I know that security came after the job system, so we had security officer, and then the various regimenting of like the subcategorization of those areas. But yeah, from the beginning, you probably had like one person from each of the roles. Obviously, assistant's always been there because there had to be something for. Actually, there used to be 4 types of assistant. Because there always had to be. And you could pick which kind of assistant you were. It really didn't make much of a difference. It just kind of said which like area of the station you were assisting.
So assistants directed towards specifically a branch of the station.
Yeah, but like also keep in mind that like at the time there was like not much job related content. So like it was kind of funny. Now it would make more sense to have direct assistants, and at the time it didn't because there was nothing for direct assistants to do. But at the time there were direct assistants, but they didn't do anything. But now there's assistants and they're not directed, and they still actually don't do anything. But
yeah, I mean,
cause chaos.
Yeah, Gray Tide worldwide.
Also, yeah, originally you didn't start with job-related clothing on you, because I didn't have the assets. Everyone wore blue or pink. And then I think the doctors got a uniform first, because, white. And then security, red shirts, clearly. And then, what color? The heads of staff were green. And then, what color were station engineers? They might have been yellow. Or still blue. Research stayed blue. And I think, amusingly, these color schemes are the same today as well.
It's kind of interesting to see how that's been handed down.
Truly the remnants of completely arbitrary decisions, except for red security. Obviously, there's no other color for security to be. Everything else is pretty arbitrary.
So, what jobs directly are you responsible for? Those you have listed, or any others you gave a special insight to?
I also made head of personnel, head of research, atmospheric tech, station engineer, medical doctor, medical researcher. Amusingly, because someone had the suggestion, warden and like prison guard staff. That was one of the weirder ones. Assistant. Oh, with all the jobs, there's so many.
Yeah, what about cargo? I have to ask.
No, that was a goon system.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
It's a brilliant system, by the way.
I know. I feel to be a lesser choir of angel now.
Why?
I play cargo so much.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right, buddy. You can give me
Yeah,
a
I
hug
think.
later.
Oh God. I think cargo was originally basically rolled into station engineer, like because the station engineer was responsible for resupplying the station. And I mean, at the time there was no there was no power system. Everything just had power, so they would have nothing else to do but resupply the station and rebuild things, and that normally what cargo did. But there was no resupply shuttle either. There was just like a big room of stuff in it that they had to move around. But
Right.
they never,
Yeah, like a central parts stockpile.
yeah, they were just faff about mostly though. Just
Okay. So we've gone over what systems you created. So I have to ask you this. This is something of the round types that were there at the beginning. What was your favorite? What was your favorite then, and why?
I mean, obviously, I always consider Traitor the initial mode. At least in my original design, it did have problems in that. Well, we can actually get to that maybe for the future as well, where there was just not enough action.
Mm-hmm.
In that, like, people would have nothing else to do but try to root out the traitor, which makes it hard to be a traitor. People would have no excuse to do anything suspicious because the jobs didn't really have any meaning, so that was problematic. So while I really do like Traitor as the concept of the mode, probably my favorite mode, like balance-wise, was probably nuclear operatives because directed things to do. Like it just seemed like it was actually had the capability of being balanced, and just because it was amusing, the monkey infection mode. Because what I saw a movie that inspired me to add it, and I just for the life of me can't remember what it was. The movie had nothing to do with term infection. Yeah.
I mean, here's
mostly
the
because
thing.
both of them had like balanceable gameplay.
No, I understand what you're saying. Is you're adding a lot of things into the game that can be very interesting, depending on how the players play, of course. But also, they're directed PvP. They have objectives versus the meteors may kill you or not, and the shuttle will come at some point. So whatever.
Well, I do want to get back to meteors. I think you could fix meteor mode, but it would take a lot of work.
How would you fix meteor mode?
I mean, you have to completely revamp the PvE aspects of the station. So, I mean, you've probably played like. It would be like you actually would have the station would have shields, armor, a balanced engine power generation setup, and the meteors would you'd be able to predict where they're coming from, track them, and they hit only certain parts of the station. They'd ramp up in intensity, and just basically be an adventure of trying to like survive as long as you can against this like meteor shower. You might throw in other weird events, not just meteors, because that could get boring. Where you're just trying to like keep the station together as like so much other stuff goes wrong.
Right.
And you would tie in a bunch of other game systems to it. I've actually written posts on this, so I think some people have read them. Where like the science team is developing like better power sources or better ways of utilizing powers to improve the shields, etc.
Okay. Yeah. No, I get that. So it becomes an endurance event, but also one where they can try to do some damage control, but try to develop better technology. No, I get that.
Basically, less randomness, more agency, where the station staff's actions have an impact on their survivability. That's really the key, is being able to have an impact, not just like randomly dying because a meteor crashed through like one wall and just destroyed everything.
So what was
no fun.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. So what was the greatest difficulty in making Space Station 13, do you think? Well, when I came back with the goon stuff, just keeping everything optimized and smooth running, especially across like multiple like hobbyist level programmers, just had to do it was just take a lot of profiling and analysis, just get everything moving. For me, it's always been trying to generate art assets, but it helps when other people are around that are actually not horrible at art. Yeah, I was going to ask, did you do all the sprite work yourself, or?
I did some of it. Amusingly, what the pictures people see and call as awful art, which, I mean, the old ones, I think the ones in Mandalore Gaming's video, a lot of those were actually, those were actually drawn by someone else who had seen my art and been like, I can make this a little bit better, and they did send me stuff that was a little bit better. So, it's because, the original art was worse, basically worse than that. which is kind of hilarious to think about. And then obviously Supernord redid almost all of it at some point.
Yeah, I mean, the modern Space Station 13 sprites are pretty amazing in some areas.
Yes.
I mean, considering they're tiny little sprites, I mean, they're pretty bonkers in what they are.
Yeah. Plus, Beyond Resolution lets you have, like, well, at the time, it was created for really the longest time, 32 by 32, but,
Yeah.
like, blown up to what's clearly not 32 by 32 pixels if you rendered on a modern monitor. And then, like, you could do 64 by 64, but, like, none of the art is 64 by 64, so you have to redo all of it, so no one did. No one's going to. It would be too much.
So, when designing the game, did you expect the community to grow into something as silly as it has become? Or did you expect, perhaps when you were building the game, a more serious player base? Or was it just an experiment and you really didn't think about it?
Okay, hold on, let me hit those one at a time.
Sure.
Did not expect it to grow as much as I thought. Truly, my original... I might have mentioned this vaguely earlier, but more specifically, my original idea was just like, let's demo this airflow thing, and then maybe it'll be interesting, and then we can see, I don't know, how it would work if you ever wanted to do it in other games. But I never had, like, I was never going to, like, launch it in another game engine, like a real game engine. I don't know, I think I just thought at the time it'd be kind of cool to try out to see if it works in a game, just hypothetically. And apparently it kind of does. I kind of expected it to, well, because of the lack of, like, driven content, I did kind of rely on, I guess people call them heavy RP, to keep things from, like, being too dirtily or boring, that, like, people kind of make their own content in, like, a somewhat interactive D&D session, I guess.
Right.
Which kind of, so, like, not, like, high action, we're just going to deathmatch everywhere, because the game systems were never designed, well, you know, the game systems were designed for it, and honestly, Beyond as an engine can't handle that kind of gameplay very well. At least not with the way SS13 was coded. It would take way too much effort to do that, and not worth it. You'd be coded in something else at that point to actually be more efficient. Yeah, and so we had a third one, and I forgot what it was.
Well, no, I just wanted to see, you know...
Oh!
Yeah, I mean...
Also, for the first thing with the atmosphere... maybe it'll come up later, but I want to make sure I get it in. I hate in games when I'm playing stuff, because by trade I'm an engineer, if not obvious from how I communicate. I like in games when you can actually fiddle with things. Like, a good example is Doom 3, which, admittedly, not that great a game otherwise, but, like, the fact that you can, like, actually touch buttons on the screen, and a lot of them have an effect. And when I was doing SS13, I wanted, and also, much better example, NetHack, where just the dev team thinks that everything is a meme that is astoundingly accurate when you're playing it. So I like building systems that just have a certain depth, and, like, you know, every buttons in the game do something. It's not just like there's, like, decorative computer screens that just sit there. Like,
everything can be played with. Everything's there for a purpose. It's not just art.
Yes. Yeah. So I kind of, like, was using that as, like, so SS13 was both the atmospheric simulator and also a test bench for just, like, fiddling around with lots of tiny things, which pretty much makes it squarely a hobbyist project, because in real game projects you end up having to make substantial cuts in order to hit deadlines.
Yeah, I mean, there is the scope, which often sinks many things.
Anyway, sorry for that diversion.
No, it's fine.
I meant to say it earlier and forgot.
No, it's fine. I mean, if you want to go off on a tangent, I got plenty of room. Please.
Okay.
So, here's the thing. What was adminning like back then? Were there admins, and was the job hard, or did you not even think that was necessary? So,
actually, funny story. So the original admin system was some Beyond library, I think, and which made it really easy to find levels. So, like, just for fun, I defined a lot of levels, most of which were never used. Like, there'd be, like, primary admin, secondary admin, moderator. Like, there were, like, and, like, the player base was so small that it never made sense to have that many levels. And there were probably 4 or 5 people with administrative privileges, but it usually wasn't a problem because people, I mean, the griefing wasn't as big of, I mean, people did it, but, like, it wasn't considered, it just never there never really that there was never really as much griefing drama, so to speak. Like, or the round would be over, people forgot about it, moved on, or like people just weren't quite as malicious at the time, maybe because again the entire player base was much smaller, and directed again from the Beyond community itself, not like from random people outside the community joining Beyond just to do SS13, if that makes sense. So like there was griefing, but it wasn't that big of a problem. Now there was still the admin stuff because the admin was actually mostly for like handling, like making sure, like fiddling with the game modes to get it right, or doing little events, which was rare but happened occasionally. And okay, sometimes people do need to be kicked or whatever. I have been amused that modern code bases have more admin levels and actually reasonably staff them all. And that, like, the admin level, and I think this admin system has since been totally recoded into like not use the old library. But I was always been amused that that system, which was like over designed, ended up being
implemented in some way.
Ended up no longer being over designed.
Right. I mean, because eventually they did fill those roles, and in many servers fill them well.
Yeah.
So, how much did technical limitations shape the game?
Well, it's kind of one of those things where, like from 1984, where your ideas are somewhat shaped by the engine itself. Like you won't explore or have as many ideas that would be considered out of scope for the engine. Like clearly, it's in 2D with that projection because that's what Beyond supported. Like top down / oblique. Like you couldn't, like Beyond at the time I started it couldn't even do like an isometric very well without like significant amount of work. So that's probably the best example. The way like kind of amusingly, SS13's movement system is very against what Beyond wants you to do, where either tiles are fully dense or not, and that it always required a lot of work to like basically have those windows to only take up part of the tile. Probably the fact that the stations, well, although even the multi-C stations kind of have relics of this problem, where the station was very flat in one level.
Yeah.
It's again because of Beyond. The fact there's no overworlds because it wasn't really designed for one. So yeah, a lot of the map and art projection concerns are because of the engine limitations. Like with regards to actual game logic, I mean it's not pixel perfect shooting because again, when you have a dumb client with a lot of people, you can't implement that very well. So you target things, not directions with the guns and stuff.
Right.
It's really a lot of once you go beyond the like map plus art, it's a lot of like subtle things like and stuff. The way interfaces work are partly because I'm incapable of designing interfaces correctly, and also that like for the longest time you couldn't easily do keybinds and beyond, so everything was like with mouse clicks. Had to be mouse clicks on the screen or like hard to type verbs. So so you can actually blame a lot of it on like just working with the limitations of the engine, which might not be true now, but were true for long enough in the past that they've carried forward forever.
I understand that. It's shaped the game in the mold it will always be in.
Yes.
All right, and we are back. Part 2 of the interview. You wanted to say something about R4407.
Yes, and I think this will probably segue nicely into what you want to talk about in the present category. So I was around directly for what is commonly known as goonstation R4407, where I think it was Nanook who actually spearheaded it, released the goonstation source mostly at that time. And one of the impetuses of that was we had this goonstation. It was in the midst of some of their more intensely weird gimmicky features, which we won't get into, which some people didn't fully agree with, whatever. And also at the time, we had just finished deploying /dev, one of the old names of the atmospheric system before Linda and ZAS were even a thing, to it, drastically improving the air system simulation times and causing an immediate doubling of the station size. And I can't remember exactly why, but like some of the we'll call senior developers wanted to like, especially because like it was hard to compete with some of the gimmick stuff. It was like, hey, maybe if we like open source it so other people could like try a version without the gimmicks or prove their own stuff. Basically, we kind of senior developers all went together. It was like, hey, let's just open source it. And so like Nanak was like, you guys have a problem with this? I was like, no, I don't have a problem with this. And then I think Exadv was on board. Herculean was pretty much on board. God, who else was around at the time? And it was like, yeah, so there was just like release. And since then, I think 4.7 has basically sparked everything else that like all the other like they almost all the code bases derive in some of their history from that release. Since then, and that is basically it. Yeah, so I thought that's probably also a very pivotal part in Spacestation 13 history that people can track from. Well, you can definitely track from because at that point it was on GitHub, and then that actually has nice logs in the histories of every other repository.
No, I see what you're saying. You're pointing out to where all branches come from our 4407.
Yeah.
And now we are at the present where they all flow to.
Yes. That's so poetic.
Well, thank you. I dabble. So, now that we're talking about the present, any round types that exist currently that you don't care for, think are a bad fit, or you think that are fucking awesome?
So I really liked the idea of the changeling round type. That I think I got to be the changeling once. Brilliant. It also kind of no, actually I think I like almost all the round types. I'd have to look at the comprehensive list, probably from TG Station because that seems to have almost all of them, to see if there are ones that I hate. I mean, the cult idea is hilarious. I guess revolution it's a neat concept. There are some ideas in the execution that kind of confuse me, like way people get converted or not. As a general concept, it's fine. I think the execution's a little weak. What else is there? Do you remember?
Yeah, no. I tell you what, just so I'm not a liar, I will go ahead and do as you suggested. One moment. Yeah, let's go ahead and look. I'm just
gonna pull up from TG Station. I think they might add some, but if I recall, at least I know where to find it.
Well, I know for Changeling there's also Shadowling.
Not familiar with that one. Wizard, I think I always thought was. That's just again. I don't hate any of them. Some of them just kind of confuse me. Wizard's kind of like. Admittedly, I really warmed up to Wizard from the way that one Mandalore Gaming review did, because the way he described it so matter of factly. Oh, and of course, there's a Wizard Federation trying to destroy the ship too, possibly. And then
why not?
It kind of ends up being in the same line of like pseudo comedic relief as the clown, where like you can prevent the game from taking itself too seriously because there's this like hardcore atmospheric simulator, like grim dark, other things going on, and also there's a clown and a space wizard just trying to destroy everything. Whatever. Yeah. So yeah, looking at this, it's all pretty reasonable. I'm assuming double agents. It's the one where
that's double agents is a theme on Traitor, more or less.
I'm almost shocked. I'm shocked that there's no ship style game mode, but I guess it would be hard.
There's an FTL 13 server where you can play on a ship, and it's like a game of FTL.
Sorry, let me amend that. What I meant was the game, the ship.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
But I think the problem would be that like you need some way to make it so you aren't just killing everyone at the same because in the ship there's like the strict PvP things, so that like you only kill your target. I could see that why, but yeah, no, all of them are very reasonable, and it looks like the ones that might be weirdly confusing were put off the rotation. Truly, the only mechanic in Space Station 13 I don't particularly like per se, or think is like not designed quite correctly, is the AI.
What would you change?
Well, I mean, it has great meme potential. I think the main problem with the AI is that it's super reliant, even in the low RP servers, at any RP level. It's just super powerful in almost all of its incarnations. So it's reliant on the AI role-playing in which they restrict their own power level. which is probably better on high RP servers because then they're forced to do it. But even low RP servers, if the AI wants to do stuff, there's like nothing stopping.
No,
Like,
I understand
mechanically. Like it's just like you need like there's no such thing as a low RP AI in any team server because like it's just the law mode itself with the whole like you have to follow these, but like there's nothing enforcing that.
Yeah, I get that.
It's like the admins like staring down the AI and being like, no, you can't do that or whatever. That's probably the. And I think I've played on like some of the servers and like the AI, like in my mind, the AI was like never able to manifest the physical form, and so they had like kind of like direct things through their like cyborgs, which were separate player, or they had to direct things through like fiddling with like the door status. But there was one where the AI, one of the servers let their AI like temporarily downloads themselves into a cyborg body to move around and manipulate stuff, and it's like okay, now they just are basically a mini admin. Which, yeah, that's probably the... Yeah, because I just look at the list, I saw AI malfunction. It's like, yeah, that one could probably... I could see why that one would be removed from the rotation. Because if the AI is allowed to just kill everyone, they're not going to have a hard time doing it.
Yeah, an AI I've seen kill a station in minutes, and you don't know what's going on until you're dead.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only thing, is that, like... and it's not... I guess I don't want to say I hate the AI, or think it's a, like, categorically a bad thing. I just think that it's just... it's way too easy for the AI to be overpowered, and I don't think anyone would contest that, or at least I don't think any of the developers would contest that because almost assuredly they ran into the problem.
I understand. Of the modern round types, which is your most favorite?
Oh, well, let's see. I think the mixture modes where they just the pop in traitors and changelings and stuff are pretty solid. Yeah, probably that one. I think because I think now actually in the modern round modes where people have stuff to do and reasons to move around, traitor ends up executing. The traitor main mode ends up executing pretty well. I unfortunately have never been able to experience a good cult or cult round. I don't think I've ever been in a cult round or a more modern nuclear round, as I mentioned. And it seems like most of the servers put Monkey onto rotation. I can understand totally why you'd hate Meteor in this current thing. So yeah, probably actually back to the classics of Traitor plus Changeling.
All right.
Except for the one round I played where I was doing fine and then was talking to my fellow scientist, and then I found out my fellow scientist was the Changeling, and then proceeded to destroy my face.
Yeah, that will happen.
It was an unfortunate affair.
A bad day for science.
Yes. Well, yes.
So, do you play Space Station 13 today, and would you mind sharing where?
I don't really play it that much. I have this problem where I play, particularly Space Station 13, but even other games, where I'll play it, and I'll be like, well, playing it was fun. But what I really should be doing? I should be developing more stuff, or like working on personal projects that are related to game development. And so that usually means I don't end up playing that much. I did play Space. The main reason why I was joining some servers recently in the past month plus was like I had been in the SS13 host chat, and like they were talking about their server features, like, oh, I want to see what some of this stuff is, so let's just jump around and see what's going on. So I think I did a fairly big smattering. I did like Colonial Marines, obviously, although I talked to Apocalypse later. Apparently I should not have played as a medical researcher because that's the most boring job on the station. Whoops. Then I played Polaris. I think I did that one. Paradise. I had played TG Station in the past, so I didn't do that one this time. Also, I kind of wanted to mix between what I knew was derived from TG Station and Space Station, because I thought like by playing the like ones that derive from it, they would inherit the features from their parent and then add other stuff, so I could get like a 2-for-1 there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like Polaris, Paradise. I think I did Citadel a couple times. It showed up high on the list of places to play, and then I even tried Virgo Station, the controversial,
the fun one, as some would say, who are sadists.
It was hilarious because unlike other people, I joined it. It was fine. It's definitely a high RP server. Nothing bad was happening. Like, it was very tame. There was lots of people at the bar talking, and then the medical bay was doing the medical bay doctor stuff, and everything was totally normal and actually not that insane. So then I saw the review of it. I was like, oh, well, that didn't happen. I didn't even see any of that. So I guess, whoops.
I like what
I apparently.
more.
I feel like I got a totally different play experience than what everyone else says they get from.
Yeah.
Or maybe I was just lucky or unlucky. I don't know what depending on your perspective.
Mandalore said, and I will quote him directly at this. He said that he went back to that station and found out nothing was going on, and was just kind of standing around and talking. And the reason he believes that is the case is because they've done everything, and there's nothing left to do but sit around and talk.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So what is your
I guess he did end up rather consumed by that server.
Your choice of words. Okay. We've kind of gone over what are your favorite events and what are your least favorite events. What is your opinion on Nations rounds? Hail Cargonia.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. Let me look at what that actually means. I have never played on one.
They're very informal. They're very informal.
That one is hilarious because, okay, so I don't know, maybe we'll eventually get to it more formally. I've always had ever since playing World of Warcraft, especially doing WoW raiding, I've generally had a much better opinion of better PvE content where people work together in specialized roles to achieve a greater goal. So Nations is kind of the exact opposite of what that thought would be. Because if I was going to do massive SS13 development and changes, it'd be forcing the people to work together and do their role really well, but interact with other people to do their job better, and everyone does a good job. And Nations is kind of the exact opposite of that, although that can also be hilarious. So,
yeah,
it could actually go either way. I mean, you could actually probably still have this weird cooperative environment in this everyone they're each department's a nation state. It's just they have to interact with each other a little bit more diplomatically.
Yeah, it usually does not end up going that way.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Yeah. So, what is your favorite station? I don't mean server. I mean of the stations you've seen people build over the years.
Oh, yeah. So
architecture-wise, what is your favorite station?
This is where it's going to be hilarious and amazing. I actually really like the 6th level station design on Virgo.
Oh boy.
Just because the idea, just the concept of having the 3 levels on the bottom on a planet, and then the space elevator up to a 3-level satellite was just kind of pretty cool. Also, it was the first server I joined with multi-Z, and the first server I joined with multi-Z that actually didn't seem to break. So that was probably a bias. But of the TG derived ones that aren't multi-Z, I think it was Metastation. Metastation's pretty serviceable and fine.
So, what stations do you think have the most in common with the early project of Space Station 13? And which you've taken it the furthest? And by this time, I mean the servers.
Yeah, the code bases. So, amusingly, obviously, the base station and base station derived ones have hit the high RP expectations that I was originally going for, where the game is more of a partial D&D dungeon master, and you kind of roll your own RP in other aspects. Obviously, Colonial Marines went in a direction totally different than the original projections, clearly, which is not a bad thing. It's just an impressively amusing thing. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just thinking.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I feel most of them, especially, I ended up revising my vision on how things worked during the Goon redevelopment time of, around 2008.
Right.
And into being a little bit more of a, competitive cooperative experience. And so a lot of them ended up still following along with what you could say is the general vision of, a bunch of people to kind of autonomously doing their own thing, but supposedly kind of trying to work together. I think supposedly some of the even TG some of the TG station ones, you have the science that are supposed to be developing, analyzing new things, developing new stuff, and then mining does the materials. So it's interesting how they've kind of converged on some of those forced interactions in order to keep people from going insane and attacking each other all the time. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I'm just taking it in because there's a lot of interesting stuff here being said. So, having created this
I'm always impressed at just how, like, the station kept getting so much bigger. Like, I'm looking at the list of locations on Metastation, and it's just like, there's so many rooms. There's like, there's 1, 2, 9 general areas, and like a general area will have 9 to 10 things, like 10 around 10 things inside of it each.
Well, here, I'll send this to you. This is another TG Station map. This is
there we go.
Delta Station, which is enormous.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, honestly, the only thing I wish we could have done, and again, it's also one thing that would be really hard to do in Beyond because there's not great support for maybe 5.12 will have something, is putting stuff on other levels, because I think like getting a little bit of a small amount of a vertical component could keep things from being a little bit as sprawly as it is.
Yeah. No, I understand.
Yeah, I love it.
So, having created this game, what do you think of the community that has grown up around it? Something you put out there in the world has dedicated fans, players, strategies, builds, and even low-tier media folk like myself.
Whoops. Is this the part where I'm supposed to give an apology for everyone?
You can if you want.
Where I'm supposed to like atone for the productivity loss of what has to have been thousands of man hours or person hours.
And all the salt.
Please, they've just been playing League and have been worse. Let's be serious themselves.
No, I agree.
I can't take the blame for people being salty in video games. They'll do that to themselves.
Yes, they will.
Oh, good. Yeah, I just did a check. Your map has no lost memes in it. That's good. That's good.
Oh yeah. So I mean, yeah. I'm just wondering, what do you think about this world that has sprung up out of something you just kind of cobbled together as a young man and put on the internet?
It's actually rather impressive. It's kind of, well, there are some parts that are hilarious. I like how people will oversubscribe certain, like, reverence to what would be lore features that I just arbitrarily decided upon or never thought about. Like, I think people still debate over the proper name for plasma or whatever it is. Even though, like, I think when I originally chose it, like, I didn't think it through, and I just, like, chose a fancy science word, and I was, like, very rapidly was like, oh, wait, shoot, no, this has an actual meaning. I should have called this something else. So, I'll read, like, the Reddit post where it's, like, is Foron the worst name for this ever, or, like, a crime against humanity. I'm like, no, it seems fine. It's a more reasonable thing, because it's now, like, not, like, this weird science misname.
Yeah, I mean, people are going to debate over anything. I mean, if you made the original floor tiles black, they would complain if someone changed that.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I think the original floor tiles were very disgusting dark gray.
Well, that's why you then create a janitor to make them a less disgusting dark gray.
Oh my god. Yeah, wait, yeah. So I think it's actually pretty impressive how people have expanded upon it over so long.
Yeah.
The only weird part, I guess this is true. I think this is true for other communities. Maybe you'll probably end up getting into this again when we go to, if you want everyone to talk about the various code bases and how they interact. People seem to care a lot about what is in code bases they don't actually play on. And I kind of have the opinion, like, if you hate it so much, don't play there, or like branch their code base, remove what you want, and run your own server. And then if you have enough like-minded people, then you kind of solve the problem yourself.
Right. I mean, if you don't like it, leave it. And if you want to steal ideas from it, start your own thing. And if you're doing something reasonably well, people will follow it.
Yeah, like a lot of the Reddit, I hate this post, this is the worst thing to happen to their teams forever. It's just like, well, you just take their code base, which they publish, fork it, remove the things you hate, and then post it. And because if that's the only thing missing, it's fine.
Right. So what do you think, now that we have discussed this, code forking and so on, what do you think about the split of your community over various code forks and gameplay focuses?
I think it actually ended up working out rather well. If you look at the code bases, a lot of them still end up occasionally re-basing themselves off of each other in core features. So they end up sharing a lot with each other. It's not a strictly one-dimensional flow to some degree. I mean, a lot of it ends up flowing out from like TG station and base station. Like I think the core systems, like the timer system, the global handling system, the way controllers work, flow out from TG station with like bug reports coming in from like their subcategories. But I think it ends up you can kind of because most of them aren't hard forks, essentially, is what I'm getting at. So they're not. So people can kind of switch between servers, especially ones that are close to each other on what we'll call like the map of how people are working from each other, pretty seamlessly. And so what I just said of like you making your own server, forking it, and like removing one thing, what isn't like this huge endeavor. Like people from the old servers, or even like one related to the old server, can still come to yours and have a very similar experience. So it ends up not being as fracturing as I think people are afraid of, because you still end up playing a lot. A lot of the core systems still end up being the same.
I get what you're saying. Now, speaking of that, there are some stations that are hugely popular because they offer lots of alien races and so on, and some that would then think that overboard because reasons of furries.
Yes,
and others that are more purist. What are your thoughts on that?
So, actually, this is going to go back to what I kind of said before, where, like, I think people oversubscribe original decisions to like, original arbitrary decisions to being huge things that are set in stone. The original reason why there were no races besides human was because I couldn't even draw humans, so keeping art assets relevant for just them was already a struggle. And then, even when Supernova was working, I'm pretty sure he would have killed someone if they said they wanted to add 3 or 4 more races to the game that he then had to like manage art assets for. So I don't like the purist argument, because I think it's just trying to oversubscribe like this level of lore that does not, this like reverence to a lore that does not exist. But as a better argument, I enjoy a lot of sci-fi games, sci-fi stuff. For example, I really enjoy Starbound, where I play as I think I played as a glitch, mostly because I thought their art and ships were kind of cool.
Yeah, medieval robots. I mean, that's pretty hilarious.
Oh yeah. And then like Stellaris, love that game. Although I haven't played it in a while. I was waiting for the current expansion pack to get released. Love that game, and that game does non-human races to great success. I love the memes where it's like the cute like snail people, or like the genocidal like warmongers. It's a pretty easy to make meme, but just hilarious. Adds to the amusement.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and the other thing is that like those servers put the content in because they thought they would have a player base that would enjoy it, or like wanted to play it with non-human characters. And you said they were some of them are very, very successful, and so clearly it's working for them. If you think that it's detrimental, you can always take their code base, or probably really the code base they're forked from, because I think most of them took like TG Station then added the alien races, or took base station and added more alien races, and just have that and see if you're more successful than them. And if you're not, well, I guess you were wrong.
Right.
And players did prefer having more customization options. Plus, to be fair, and this is kind of go back to like what I thought was kind of cool and how I approached SS13. Like SS13 was a way in which I learned how to program, especially in larger, how to manage coding in a large application or code base beyond just like Hello World or Hello Mini game. Where it's like, because you really have to interact with like a lot of other people's code and a lot of systems, and they go deep into debugging in an archaic engine. Customization options and what I call gimmicks are people's like way of getting their feet wet in doing SS13 development or coding in general. Like, it's like, oh, I want to play as whatever, so I'll just add that race and I'll give them 1 or 2 features. Or I want to add this game mode, so I'll add that. Or I want to add the item and I want to add that. And it's a good way to for them to get better at development themselves, or art or whatever, and they can have an immediate impact on what they're doing. And this is actually kind of taking over your question and doing something else. My apologies.
That's fine. Take it and run, man.
Some of them end up being pretty core game systems. For example, and double check your little map you sent me. For example, hydroponics was, I believe, the brainchild of, let's go with Lavender from Goonstation as an original gimmick system. I think he basically wanted an excuse to like put space weed into the game, and then but had to build up the conceit by putting in other plants. And so it was originally coded truly awfully, spaghetti code everywhere. I mean, more so than SS13 is today. But it was one of his first major systems that he was working on, and so for the longest time it was considered a gimmick system to some degree, not a core system that a lot of people were working on, just someone's pet project that they wanted to put into the game to have a mark. But since then it's grown, people have taken it on, enriched it, designed it, and now I think most people would consider hydroponics to be one of the core parts of the game, or at least there's plenty of job titles that people would complain about if it didn't exist. Plus, it can now have interactions with chemistry as they develop plants that they send to chemistry, or chemistry sends them drugs for genetically modifying their plants, etc. So I mostly don't like saying that people who add content to the game are adding the content because it's keeping the game alive and letting them express their creative interests. Also, to some degree, the ones with the more, we'll say, controversial target content tend to isolate themselves on their own servers. You had to find the one we were talking about earlier, and immediately what could theoretically be there before you get into it. So it's
right.
It's not you have
it's
to
in the name. I mean, it's gonna happen.
You have to, and not even just the name. Even though the name is, I think they pop up a review. It's this is going to be here. Please be warned. And also, it's whatever.
So
just to bring close, because I diverged. I want to make sure I actually hit your original point.
No, I think we've kind of hit all over that point. That's a good one.
I think what you sent me isn't this just Meta Station?
That's Delta. That is Delta Station. That is TG's newer station, and it is enormous. Plenty of room for crazy.
That was the hilarious part. When I redesigned Dead, I was like, ooh, we'll make the game run faster by redesigning the atmospherics to be more efficient. So yeah, it did run faster for a little bit until the next map came, made the map 4 times larger. It still ran faster, thankfully, but people's response to ooh, he improved the game to run a little bit faster so it's not as jumpy, was to just cram more features into it. So it was nice it was nice preparation for my real software work as well, where things don't get better, you just let people cram more stuff in. But whatever.
Yeah, I mean that's generally how software works, at least from what I understand. So there are some servers that are open source and some that are not. What are your thoughts on this divide?
So that is interesting. So professionally, at the very least, I'm basically trained to be immensely frightened of AGPL, just specifically because it can be it is far too infectious for what we're going to call actual tech firms to what to deal with. Just legally, but it's tough. When I was a couple of years ago, when I was involved with some goon, and when I was in communication with goon and TG, there was a problem, so to speak, of someone basically fine-tooth comb monitoring TG commits for particular specific changes, and then so they can immediately abuse them or unlock what was supposed to be I guess not secret content, but unlock what was supposed to be nice content. So some level of secrecy can be convenient in just having some discovery aspect to a game,
right?
Which totally open source code base makes that very hard to do.
Yeah, like the Goon Solarium, for instance.
Yes, good example. Although I guess with I mean, even in closed source games like I guess WoW, there's very little secrecy because people data mine the client files immediately anyway.
Well, it's not only that. It's with WoW, you have so many people playing the game and so many people trying to find the latest way to break the game that if it can, it will be done.
Oh, I just mean that like if a new encounter is released, someone will data mine the files, pull all of the audio and all of like the visual triggers, and like you can, or not visual triggers, like combat log triggers, so that you can actually see before it's even released to anyone. Like they could actually have pulled it, like started the encounter themselves. What people project the features, like what people project the mechanics of that boss will be. And it's like, and because WoW rating is pretty competitive, you pretty much have to look at that and like try to adjust your strategies according to that. So you can't have as much of discovery. But I guess it's kind of how like modern games work with fan sites, etc. So it's not unsolvable. It's not like a problem exclusive to PlayStation 13. One thing to keep in mind is that it would probably, a lot of PlayStation 13 features would have been easier to develop or maintain. At least remakes would be easier if Beyond's engine was open sourced.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I mean, in order to protect some of that secrecy, closed source would be easier, but we do live. Yeah. And
I think a lot of, kind of going along with what I said earlier, I think a lot of space industry development is enriched by the open source code bases. Like, as I said before, if someone truly hates something or has an idea they must add, they can just pick their favorite server and remove the thing they hate and replace it with something else, or experiment with it to add something that they want and try to get it upstream to someone else. Whereas if it was totally closed source, you'd be at the whims of like whatever those developers were up to.
Right.
So it's kind of like there's a time and place for everything. I guess ideally in the ideal world, although it's kind of impossible to do that with how people are motivated, you'd have like the core game be completely open source and people would have a preference to have as much open source things as possible, with like some servers being permitted, so to speak, or like allowing themselves to have some they baked in, their map wouldn't be public, or basically that, or stuff like that. But like the atmospherics fix-ups would remain public so that everyone could benefit from slightly better optimization, or like the way UIs are, like the AI builders that people like, the really nice like canister AIs, those are public so everyone can benefit. But like servers would still be able to have their own like secrets in their maps and stuff. But
yeah, or their own custom, art or whatever assets.
Yeah. The unfortunate part is it's nearly impossible to draw that line in a way that everyone would be satisfied.
Yeah, I understand.
Like, what one person thinks should be public, other person would be like, no, that's our server's special sauce.
Yeah, they'll say it's proprietary, and you have to take one and the other, both.
Yeah.
So, what do you think of the roleplay level of Space Station 13 as it stands today? Should Space Station 13 in your mind be a role-playing game or a frantic valid hunt? What's the optimal amount of roleplay for your interest?
God, what does valid mean again? I feel like I should know this.
A valid person is somebody that you can go after and robust mercilessly.
Valid target.
Correct. So they'll say valid salad or whatever. And you'll have some rounds where you have even lowly assistants running around looking for traitors of the smallest dose of antag just to win the round, as it were.
So, first, fortunately we have a wide variety of servers at different RP levels.
Right.
To hit anyone's particular tastes. But, not using that cheap argument, I think if you're going to have low RP servers be successful, the lower the RP, the more important the game is balanced. Or the more important that like people have to find things that they can do and get benefit for. So like I basically am saying that I think it's actually harder to design good low RP experience because you have to fill in as the game developer the role of what the players who previously have been role playing to do. If that makes sense. Whereas in a high RP server, you could rely on people going to medbay and rely on the doctor to patch them up, or like make the medicine, or people referring to command structures just as a matter of just the role play. Like people will fill in the gaps in the game systems for you. In a lower RP server, you don't really have that benefit. You have to assume that the player is going to try to game the system more. And so you have to actually, that's actually partly why, for example, I think, like as I mentioned before, the AI is much harder to develop in the low RP system because you kind of have to assume they're going to be abusive. Versus in the high RP system, you can be like, no, this is the high RP server. You have to follow your laws, or etc.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I mean, it's always about that fine balance.
Yeah. And, I mean, to some degree, I think going totally low RP, like full, like no RP, would be really hard just because, like, the way the Beyond engine works, the latency, and, like, how slow it is to take actions, like, you couldn't have, like, you can't have, like, Twitch actions, like, fast actions, which would puts a floor on how low of an RP you can go, because you still need, like, someone could just kill you instantly without like any pre-warning, because they go to they're holding a toolbox that seems reasonable. They run up to you and then like they double click you and you're unconscious. And you didn't even get to see it because there's no animations, nothing showing that they were going to attack you. They just did it instantly. So like that in a no RP environment, that would be totally legit because they can do it. And at least in like some RP environments, it's like no, they have had some sort of reason to attack you as like a protection. This RP serves as a protection to paper over certain game system flaws, which is a weak argument, I guess, because the game system should be patched up. But just something to keep in mind when you're developing at your RP level. Does that make sense? I've actually spent a fair bit of time thinking about this, but
I think
not enough time articulating myself on it.
No, it's fine. I think because ultimately I'm asking your impression or your opinion because, it's like if you had a chance to ask God his opinion as why do we exist, you hope the answer is not to simply exist, So, I mean, no, I appreciate it. I have to ask, though, I mean, here's another question I've got that I think a lot of people may be interested in. Over the years, there have been a lot of attempts to make a Space Station 13 standalone. From the standalone Space Station 13 iteration using XNA framework, to a Java port, to Space Station Source, to Minecraft 13, to commercial projects like Centration and Dean Hall's canceled Ion. Right now, there's even a game called Stationeers in development.
Yeah, how is that different? Do you know how that's different from Ion? Like, they both seem like they're the same. Like, they said he canceled it and then made Stationeers, but they both seem like basically the same thing.
I don't know. I never got to really see Ion played.
I was hoping someone would be able to answer that question. Regardless, yes.
Yeah, I mean, do you think all these projects are always doomed to fail to bring Space Station 13 out of Beyond? Is there a curse you worked into the code long ago? Or are they missing a certain something that makes Space Station 13?
So this is going to sound really like... I don't want to make this sound... I'm trying to think of a way that doesn't sound... let's actually put it away. Let's put it a different way. I discussed earlier how a lot of people start... How a lot of the way SS13 is, and it being Beyond, and like people start coding by adding little things to SS13, like little features to get mixed up, if you recall.
Yeah.
Okay. So the skills required to write a game engine are different than the skills required to write game in a game engine. Or like to write a game and Beyond is clearly a game engine. Actually, to some degree, SS13 in Beyond is its own game engine on top of Beyond because it has so many systems that you have to kind of be aware of and interact with in order to get whatever you're adding to work. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. But like, for example, if you were going to write, especially the 3D ones, which have their own problems with the fact that it is expensive to make 3D assets. I mean, just look at the development costs for modern games today, especially ones in 3D. It's just very expensive. The effort and time it takes to online a new game engine is extreme. And even if you're going to use your own game engine, a pre-existing game engine like Unity or Unreal, you're still going to have to end up doing a lot of engine-related work on top of that to get you to the level where like SS13 and Beyond is now, where you can just quickly add features and whatever you want already. And I think a lot of people who who go to do the reworks don't initially realize the level of commitment you're undertaking there. I mean, in fact, this is not a thing that's just wrong with this. Junior developers, classically in the software industry, people do not have a good understanding of how long it takes to do any software project. Look at that. There's veteran game studios. Star Citizen. Oh wait, no, cut that out.
It's fine.
No, like,
you're allowed to have an opinion. I mean,
well, no, like,
yeah.
No, I don't get hate mail. No, but like, that's like, look at how long, like, I'll just use that example. Like, yeah, Star Citizen or any game takes and has like slips in their schedule as they need to like redo core systems, like stuff comes up. I only thought of it because I remembered Mandalore's review of it and how like they've slipped years on their original projections in making this stuff. And that, I mean, that's just one example. I guess I could kind of like challenge you of like, is there any game that doesn't spend a lot of time in early access doing all of its stuff? And specifically for SpaceStation 13, I think a lot of people going into the remake would be like, oh, we'll port SpaceStation 13 in like a year, as like ported to quote unquote as it is today, and you'll never do that.
Yeah, I mean, no, I get what you're saying. It's
you might get the engine of which you could start putting features at the rate you could today in a year, but you're not going to get the game in a year. It's as it like with all the features as it is today. Like you probably like looking at this map, you probably could get like at most a sixth of it. Like you'd go down to like 5 jobs, and then like they'd all have maybe something to do, and you'd have to build up from there. And
right. I mean, I get what you're saying. Why you say Star Citizen as an example, or why you say any early access as an example. Understanding really the scope of a project is essential to understand how to develop it. And something like SpaceStation 13, I mean, as you and I had discussed previously a few weeks ago, where we talked about Dwarf Fortress.
Yes.
And saying that if they wanted to turn Dwarf Fortress into a standalone game with a new UI, an isometric viewpoint, blah, 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 they would have to try to recreate a decade plus of work, in-depth work.
Yeah.
In order just to get to where they are now, which is an incomplete game.
Yeah. Okay, because every feature, every gimmick, every like role item is a feature that takes a non-zero amount of time to port. And like people are adding more of them every day and changing them, and it would take a long time. And I think just a lot of people will, and then it's just so tempting because there's already I don't want to say mostly functional. There's already a essentially functional game engine and beyond that's running that you can run your new concepts on. So I just think you'd have to spend a lot. You'd have to be willing to spend a lot of time to like redo the engine to get to the support where it is now, and you'd be comfortable just doing it in there. And I just don't think anyone's been able to muster those resources to get it done.
I get it. I mean, I really understand what you're saying. Just building all of that, rebuilding all of that would be a Herculean effort. Yeah,
you would almost assuredly make there's no way you would almost certainly not remake SpaceStation 13, because you remake the engine, you make a SpaceStation 13 inspired game that maybe could eventually evolve into the new SpaceStation 13. It would not be like Dota 1, Dota 2, because unless you have literally millions of dollars and like Steam, Valve money funding it for somehow. Like I guess I'm using the Dota 1, Dota 2 as the counter example that you could do this, but they truly invested a ton of money into doing that, of course.
Right. Now we discuss the future. Dun dun dun. So, what do you think boy, I'm gonna word one of these days real pretty. What do you think is the future of SpaceStation 13?
Well, usually it seems to have entered into not even a steady state, but like it seems to be in its current location for people doing things and slowly developing features and beyond, doing my optimizations on top. it seems to actually be progressing rather nicely at that rate. I think the number of players has stayed the same, if not gone up over time in the past few years.
It's been expanding very nicely.
That is very promising. I mean, there's always everyone jokes, there is obviously the off chance that one of the remakes is successful, in which case we'll see what happens from there. But even then, I think at the very least, enough people have played it and then gone on to do, quote unquote, like have like full-time jobs, I guess, more to say, in a game dev studio and been in quoted inspirations from PlayStation 13 in their things. I mean, I guess you joked about the Gene Hall ones, but maybe one of those or something similar will be successful. And then I do occasionally read about other sci-fi games on Reddit and whatever, and people are like, "Oh, this reminds me of SpaceStation 13." This like random or whatever. It's like, "Oh, cool, that's nice." So I think at the very least, it's been successful in bringing some ideas to the table. I'm kind of hoping that the main idea that I started with the gameplay-oriented fluid dynamics eventually goes into some major title. But I guess only time will tell whether that's a thing. Just to some degree, Space Engineers does that, although I haven't played that in a while.
And Space Engineers is fine so long as you understand that as soon as you start doing things, it turns into a postcard.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, also, like, Space Engineers has almost worse problem than Space 13, where, like, there's no goal. You just play in a sandbox.
There are meteors, though. There are meteors.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
All right, I understand.
No, I'm just thinking of something. I guess although I don't think they were not inspired by something, but as an example of a game that was able to use like air movements for fun times, FTL was great. You had the whole like use the doors meme from FTL, which I thoroughly enjoyed when I played it.
Oh yeah.
And I'm hoping eventually more games follow suit with playing around, not just with like we have the latest and greatest, fanciest graphics by using 5% more of your processor. Things now have slightly more specular diffusion. It looks that much better. Like, no, maybe if we use the 5% processor power to do a slightly better physics simulation and had some more interesting things going on, we could see what happened.
So, looking down or up as the creator and seeing everything that's happened and still continues to happen with the game, do you have anything you'd want to say directly to the Space Station 13 community? I was almost hoping you would start going off with expletives.
Well, mostly that sorry. I actually did not think. You didn't send me any of these questions, and I spent some time thinking, what could you be asking me? I feel like I should have projected this question, and I did not think of this question, so I have no prepared answer for this.
That's the idea. I'm
embarrassed. I should have a prepared answer because this is clearly the open-ended question I should have been prepared for. But whatever. I guess we don't. We're doing this live. Anyway, no, I do highly appreciate all of the people who currently play the game, and especially the people who develop the game and work on the servers for the game to continue to make it better, faster, more features, continue to be entertainment for other people. I've played a bunch of like modern titles, and I still like to go back to Space Station 13 current servers to see what people are up to. See what was it? Oh yeah, because I think for example, I was playing the Client Entertainment Oxygen Not Included. I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. And I was like, oh wait, no, your atmos simulation is really weird in that only one gas can be in a tile at a time. I was gonna come back to you later and go back to my old love, Space Station 3. But no, really, to the developers and server staff, thank you for continuing to do an excellent job in developing the game. Not even just maintaining the game, just continuing to push the game forward and establishing and maintaining your player bases. To the players, thank you for sticking it out. It's impressive how we were able to play this game in the light of what we're going to call modern gaming and all of their convenience features of proper UIs and non-lagging netcode or non-laggy servers. To the people who post on the social media related to the game, probably be a little bit less dramatic compared to other. I mean, I know gaming in general is dramatic, but I feel like sometimes it's just a bit too far. But I guess any game developer will say that. I guess Jeff Kaplan just said that. Did you see that?
No, I
the whole
haven't.
The whole Overwatch developers like, wow, managing a gaming community is kind of hard because they're very opinionated.
Yeah, it's a very diplomatic way.
Well, that was weird. There was just weird. It seems so obvious, but just the way he said it was like it's just like this like Blizzard like veteran game developers like actually, Overwatch development has actually been really hard on our community management team. But no, in all seriousness, almost all of the players are great. You occasionally, the vocal minority tends to surface up and complain about whatever's on the docket, and the other players do a good job of, I guess, are too busy playing the game to care or to yeah. So I'm not actually concerned, although I do have like friends who go on Reddit and know I made the game and they'll like see the drama and be like, hey, what's this? I'm like, oh god, no, why? That's really the only reason why I bring it up, because like I've had friends do that and I'm like, oh, just please let's not have this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty bonkers to think how people react over I can't play on this server because there's people who fart, or these fox ears are ruining Space Station 13, or
whoa. It was cat ears. Let's get that right.
Okay, but
if we're going to actually quote the real drama, I believe it was the great TG Station catgirl drama of 2017.
Yeah, I mean it's like play the game or make it the game you want it to be.
Yeah. That's the main thing, is that I think it's going back to Sir Delvers. It's really neat how like they have taken the time, like going back, kind of a theme I've been trying to build is that like, when people have a problem or have an idea, some of them, and it's amazing, will take it and just do it. And then a lot of the servers end up being wildly successful doing such.
Yeah. Like
Paradise, the super maligned server that everyone hates, has like, I think, one of the largest player bases. Which actually means not everyone hates it, just again, vocal minority. Or like, and all the other ones that have. Actually, has any code base not achieved some level of controversy?
Not yet, but
I can't think of any that have not had some sort of weird drama attached to it at some point.
I think at some point it may happen, but it'll happen on a server with 3 people.
Yeah, it'll be one of the ones that never actually get sent out.
Right. So, I just want to say, since this is the end of the interview, sir.
It's such a fun time.
I just want to say thank you, because this is probably my favorite game. Silly as that sounds. There's not a lot of AAA studios that make a game yet that I've sunk this many hours into. So, behalf of my many years of my life lost to it, I want to say thank you.
I too would like to... Oh, thank you. I'm glad to know that I was able to successfully deprive you of so many man-hours of product.
Many hours. Oh boy. Yeah, so I mean, I also want to say special thanks to everyone who helped submit questions, and as for the rest of you, I'll see you next shift.
Let's all go to Cargonia, land of stolen things. Obey the quartermaster, unless he is a link. Cargo techs scour the station to find more stuff to take, but the boss ain't never satisfied till the station breaks. Brave miner journey onwards, pickaxe firm in hand. Randolph tells them not to die, but they burn in lava land. Sing praises to Cargonia, give grace to Zorg's high priest. This is your place of refuge till Singulot's released.